Hello everyone, this is Javiera for 1133podcast.com, and today we are with Michael Brown, connecting with the land of New Zealand. Michael Brown is a trainer and consultant in media and presentation skills. He has written several books and is the author of Finding the Field, where he talks about the 5 universal truths of reality. He has had a long journey of self-discovery and awakening and traveled the world in search of truth. So today we're going to be talking about the nature of reality, these 5 fundamental truths, and also tap into other topics that we were discussing will be really interesting to talk about, such as the fact that ultimately there is no right or wrong. So, okay, Michael, I feel I've given out a lot already. Welcome.
Hello,
it's a
Javiera.
pleasure to be with you.
And good to talk to you again. I know when we left off last time, I said this outrageous thing that there's no right or wrong, and you looked regretful as if we should have kept on talking.
It's such a big statement, and many times it can be also a dangerous statement. I think we're gonna talk about that.
All right. Okay. Well, shall we begin with that?
Absolutely. I'm very curious where that statement comes from. So the stage is yours.
Well, at first sound, it's ridiculous because I think there can't be many humans alive who can tolerate the thought that there might be no right or wrong, because that's how we navigate our everyday lives. We have to make decisions. We have this part of our minds which says this is right and that is wrong, whether or not we follow that dictate. But I didn't get my peace and understanding of my own life going until that particular bit fell in place along with the universal truths, which we'll come back to in a moment. Imagine, I'm trying to imagine here the beginning of existence itself. And if you imagine a pool of consciousness that you are floating there in space, so to speak, there's nothing but consciousness, where you start asking the most fundamental question of all, what am I? Let's suppose that that's the beginning of existence. What am I? And there's nothing to explore but the self. So the creation, referred to only obliquely in the Bible, is in fact the manifestation of parts of consciousness to start experiencing life, to answer that question. All these uncountable bits of consciousness are essentially saying, what am I? Through living, through exploring, through existing from what is now a time sequence day by day. All of us and all living things and all non-living things are part of that exploration. What am I? And of course, for humans, it's who am I? When each of us says, who am I? And explores life, we are carrying out that deepest of all impulses of the universe that says, what am I? Now, when we're doing that, we have developed rules of the game where we can interact with each other. And this is where our sense of good and bad comes from. Sure, at one level, we have to take notice of that, or life would be impossible. We couldn't continue the exploration. But if we go right back to the deepest level, all of it is valid, all of it. So we can look at, say we look at a neighbor and say, well, he's been convicted for robbing a bank. At one level, we can say, whoa, I don't want anything more to do with him. He's obviously a nasty character. That is wrong, and he is a bad guy. But at a much deeper level, we've got to say this is just part of the great creation. And that's why I said that outrageous thing to you, there's no right or wrong. But I guess from your reaction, I think you know what I'm talking about. What do you think?
I would totally agree with you. I think you want to ask me a little bit of my experience of seeing that truth as well.
Please, yes.
And it's many people, they might talk about this truth, but it not always comes from a space of having seen it, have embodied that truth in a way. As you say, that it's a piece that brings us peace. In my experience was when I had a big awakening and I could see beyond the veil of the illusion of reality. One of the things that surprised me so much was that we are never judged. This
Yes.
idea that there is someone that is judging you, and that you are, you have to do good things in order to prove yourself. It's just not, as you're saying, it's more about what is beyond right or wrong, what is beyond duality in a way. And there's no judgment, it's just experience.
That's such a powerful idea. And every parent alive should listen to that idea. Here's a very, very powerful tool. When a child has done something wrong, the first impulse of many parents is to punish the child. But I know very well, and I've seen this, that the parent who then talks with the child and says, well, here's where you are now. You've done this, this, and this. What are you going to do now? And that reorienting without judging the child is a much, much more constructive thing for the child. That's just in raising children, not to judge. If we can ease up from our judgment of others, we are in a much, much stronger position ourselves.
I totally agree with you. That space of no judgment. And I want to add something as well that also surprised me, and I think this is an important piece of this statement, because the danger of this statement is to say, oh, if nothing really matters, I'll do whatever, right? And I'll just go and hurt anyone, I'll steal a bank, it doesn't matter. Yeah, ultimately, actually it doesn't, but we are bound to rules, as you were saying, and the fact that because we are also all one and all connected, when we hurt others, that hurting is actually hurting ourselves. So what I'm trying to say is that there is no judgment, but there is a consequence.
That's right. And I think we touched on this last time. As soon as you realize that other people are connected to you, are faces of you, you can't quite treat them the same way.
How did you come to that realization?
Of the good and bad, you mean?
Yes, of that, because this is a different one from the 5 fundamental truths that you explain in your book, and so I wonder, how did you realize that truth?
It's just a natural consequence of realizing the continuous nature of creation. The idea that there ultimately is no good or bad comes from a sense from understanding that the creation is continuous. It goes on forever. Endless exploration, which will involve pain and joy and harm and constructive things, both sides of the coin. That polarity is absolutely necessary. The idea that everything should be good and loving and peaceful is a nonsense.
I'm curious about that, actually. How did you realize that truth?
It came mainly from the moment I described in that last interview, up on the Andes, up on the Altiplano in the Andes, when it was snowing and I nearly died. That sudden feeling of connection with everything, and a lot of things fell into place after that. Once I felt that everything that I could see and even beyond that was part of me, it led to those other 5. And that led to the feeling that that the whole thing is valid. We can't be just taking half of life and rejecting it out of hand and judging it. It's all part of, the best word for this is game. Life is a wonderful, creative game, and we should be playing it for everything we can get.
I love that you said that, because my latest interview, the title of it is The Game of Life. It will be published just before yours, so it's brilliant what you're saying. The
Game of Life. And look, I heard a Zen koan, which I think describes it very well. Of course, I know I'm making the point that you should get into the game of life, and many young people who set out to seek the truth make a big mistake. They think that that's about withdrawing from life. that if you can see life as an illusion, you should withdraw from it somehow to be saved or to get the right karma. And it is a mistake for this life for them. The koan, the Zen koan, goes like this. The student thinks that the mountains are no longer mountains, that the trees are no longer trees, that the rivers are no longer rivers. But the master sees once again that the mountains are mountains, the trees are trees, the rivers are rivers. And so I'm saying, come out of the cave, get into everyday life. But with that thing we talked about before, don't judge it right and wrong. Don't judge it good and bad at the deepest level. Of course, you can't abandon it entirely, or you can't navigate from day to day. You will want to avoid people who harm you, of course. You will want to shelter your children from people who might harm them. But at the deepest level, you have to know that it's a game that needs both sides, or you have no game.
Exactly. I just love what you said. And it's funny, I had heard that koan from a Buddhist teaching, probably. It deeply resonates. At the beginning, you get lost in the illusion, then everything becomes real again, something.
That's right. Yeah, and you've got to make it real. So you can have this on two levels. You can have the level of peace and calm that sees all of it as valid, all of it. But you can also have the level that's intensely involved and gets happy and sad and has some losses and some gains. And you can run it on both levels.
Yes.
And in fact, you should run it from moment to moment. I see life as being like a blank canvas. Every second is a blank canvas on which you paint your next action. And the more you can blank that canvas, the better. The problem, the challenge, is that the canvas is often already filled with beliefs we don't know about. For example, you might believe that that you should be suspicious of all strangers. Let's take that one as an example, right?
That's a classical one that they teach you when you're a kid. Good one.
Yep, for sure. Now, already your canvas is not blank. And without even realizing it, you might be choosing your actions as a result of beliefs like that. You know, I mentioned my island metaphor the other day. Can I go back through it again? Because I thought of a better way to explain it.
I would love it. Actually, for the listeners that they don't know what we are talking about, when we say that we had another interview before, it's because we are working on a project called Stories of Conscious Manifestation, and Michael he's part of the project as well, and that was an amazing 1-hour interview on just how to manifest and how these 5 fundamental truths work for all of us. So having said that, just wait for the project to be ready in a few months.
Okay, so the first universal truth that I talked about in that interview was that we create our own reality, and that we are very often at the mercy of beliefs we don't even know we have. So let me explain the way of thinking about it. You are an island in the sea, and you imagine a little island with a palm tree, if you like, and that is your conscious mind. It's the thoughts that you're aware of as thoughts, right? Now, we're going to go down to the beach. The island, of course, continues under the water. But we're going to, in our own minds, travel over the top of the water, outwards from the island. Now, at first, the water is shallow. We can see down through the water, and this represents the shallowest of our beliefs. And sometimes we can see them as beliefs, not as knowledge of what is right and what is wrong, or what is so or not so. We can see them as beliefs, and we have a little bit of control over them that way. Now, as we fly over the water a little bit further, it gets deeper, and it's less easy for us to see down below. And way down below are the beliefs that have far more power over us, but we can't see them as beliefs. Examples. Let's back up a bit to where it's shallow and you can see the bottom. Here's a shallow belief. I'm depressed. Let's suppose that's what I can see at the moment. I'm not actually depressed. I am seeing that I am depressed. And that begins my control over that belief. You with me?
Yes.
Now we go a bit further out where we can't see to the bottom of where the island is under the sea. And a deep belief might be something like, teenage children are difficult. Now, you could argue, well, of course they are, but it's not the point here. The point is that your belief may be dictating how you treat those children. The belief itself will change the way you do it. And I know there are parents who get themselves in extreme difficulties because they don't realize that the belief itself is affecting them. Yeah? Let's go deeper. Deeper belief. You can't trust strangers. Mentioned that one before. Now, in my island metaphor, you can't often see that that is a belief. It just may be something that you learned from an early age and is starting to get built in. And we go deeper and deeper and deeper to what I would have to say are the unchangeable beliefs, or the things that you simply know, and you know and just assume it so you can't change them. And it might be, I was born in New Zealand. And I'm saying that at the very deepest level, it's a belief, or rather, it's a creation. And in this life, it's nonsense to even think about changing it. But to finish off the islander metaphor, we now go so deep that way under the surface, the ground starts to come up again towards other islands. And so at the deepest level, we are connected. We are one at the deepest level. But talking about the island like that, I hope has made it clear that at least to a degree, we can look at what is shaping our lives and change it. Do what we want, make decisions about our action, paint on the canvas the way we want.
And also what I pick from what you're sharing is the importance of actually looking deep. Because most of the time we navigate this reality, our life, in a very shallow way, like being conscious of very shallow beliefs. So in your case, how do you make consciousness? How are you conscious of your deepest beliefs?
I think there is only one way to do it. Are you enjoying life right now? And if you're in a situation, say you're poor right now, you have no money, and you've got to think, oh, I'm not enjoying this. Why am I not enjoying it? What am I doing that's not working here? And when you start to realize that you may be there because of your state of mind or things that have been programmed into you earlier, you can start to think, maybe I can change this. That's the key point. And I know what your next question would be. Well, how? Right? How? And that's a very easy answer.
I love easy.
You act as if you did not have that belief.
Wow.
So let's take an example. Let's go back to one I mentioned before. Let's suppose you spot the belief that I am depressed all the time.
Or another one that is classic for all of us. I am not worthy enough.
Yes.
That's a deep one.
So many suffer from that. I am no good.
I'm not good enough.
I am not worthy. I am a sinner. I am a wretched sinner. Some people still believe this stuff. Yeah. And what you say to yourself, if I was not that, if I was worthy, how would I act right now? Now, if you have enough of those actions in sequence, gradually the belief inside starts to get a little shallower, a little more visible, a little thinner, until you wonder why you ever thought that. And that's the best answer I can give to how you change the beliefs. That itself is not the challenge. The challenge is to see it as a belief. Be suspicious of strangers is a classic example of that. You've first of all got to recognize that it is a belief, not a reality that is fixed. You know what? There's no such thing as absolute reality. It's all perceived. It's all perceived. You put 1,000 people through one event, and there will be 1,000 different paths out the other side. The police know this. They interview witnesses after an event, And it's the greatest challenge, the greatest headache for police to get witnesses to agree as to what they saw. And reality for them is perceived, although I'm not sure that they would want to conduct the conversation at the level you and I are having right now.
Actually, what comes to me, and I love listening to you, is, I put myself in a situation that I live life without this knowing that there is no right or wrong. Returning a little bit on that topic and linking it with the belief systems. So how would you, this is a huge belief system. It's a huge one that we have in our society, that we have to punish the ones that are bad, and I have to pursue being good.
Okay, what I'm hearing, I think, in your voice is the apparent contradiction between saying that that there is no good and bad, and the fact that we have to live with each other.
That's one, and also how this new belief, how can we transcend this huge social belief that is dictating how we function as a society, right? We punish the ones that we consider bad people. We look to be good people. And how can we apply this truth, and succeed to override this contracted belief that there are good and bad, and live from a more expansive reality?
I think the answer to that one is easy. We don't have to be spiritual about it. You just have to look at some of the Scandinavian systems, prison systems, to see the difference. This is how it boils down to. Punishment doesn't work. If we're thinking about helping people behave in a more loving manner, it just doesn't work. You just have to look at the Scandinavian prison systems. They are far less harsh and punitive than what we see mostly around the world. And their recidivism rates are so much lower than anyone else. Punishment, all that punishment does is make the people who make us in society get a buzz of vengeance. You did this, which made me feel bad, so I'm going to punish you and I'll feel better. That's all it does.
Right. What would be a better way to respond to actions that are damaging others? Let's call it that way.
It's the adult equivalent of what I mentioned before about parents. Well, this is where you are now, which might actually be in prison. This is where you are now. What can we do so that you can live a better life and be more fulfilled and happier when you get out? So it's alongside. It's not the humiliation, the constant us and them approach that so destroys the possibilities of people improving.
I think this topic, Michael, is fascinating, and it has so many ways to talk about it. I'm curious about the resistances that we're having, even in our internet connection right now. It might be more important than we think, actually.
Oh, I know exactly what you're saying. The universe that we are creating around us right now is responding to our emotions.
And so how does this relate to the internet, for example, failing us?
The difficulty with that question is our assumption that we have a solid, absolute universe out there that's got to be discovered. This is the alley that traditional science went down. Traditional science set out to find out what the absolute universe is and how it runs. Actually, all they're doing is creating a system of agreement by which we can live from day to day. There is no absolute universe to find. It's all perception. Perceived reality is the only reality there is. And so it's no surprise to me at all that if we have something which is a deeper issue between us, we will affect what is around us, and that does include the internet.
I love what you're saying. So, for example, if this is a classical question, right? If we wanted peace in the world, right? And there are so many things that come into place, like co-manifestation. We're not the only ones in our universe, but maybe we are. What is your take to that?
To get peace in the universe,
for example, like people say, like, yes, I want everyone to be peaceful, or no more wars in this world. What would be if you wanted to step in that reality, what would we have to do, for example?
Well, actually, can I change the example a bit to
Yes.
something I know affected you? And you were, I think, running an environmental organization. Is that right?
It's true. Yes.
Okay. Back in Chile.
Yes. That's 2011 and 2012.
All right. I don't know you well enough. I have to do a little guesswork here. But I would say that you were an inspired and intense young person when you wanted to set out to change the world that way. Am I right?
You're right.
Okay. Now, there are two ways to look at this. One is going back to the idea that there is no good and bad, there's no right and wrong at one level. But it is also the reality that your intensity to change the world and modify the world around you, it's also reality. It's not something to be dismissed at all. Here's another way to look at it. Here's an old view of, there's someone struggling in the river, they're about to drown, and they're calling out for you to throw a rope to them, right? Now, at one level, you can say, well, that's their karma. Why should I help them? I'm not going to interfere.
Right, that's one answer, yes.
Yeah. At another level, it is also part of your universe that this is happening in front of you. And what now happens in your world depends on your decision. You are part of it. You cannot dismiss it. So you have two levels of reality. They're both valid.
You know, I want to share something with you that I haven't shared before. And it's funny that you mentioned when I was working with this environmental movement, which was one of the biggest in my country in 2011, 2012. We were just, well, not just, but, saying we don't agree with this. They were going to build 11 buildings on a protected area, very important piece of land with a beautiful, beautiful, nature in the middle of the city. And we disagreed, and we were only 7 people. And the actor that we shouldn't forget also, that also has a saying, is the dune itself was their agreement as an entity as well. Maybe I'm going a little bit deep here, or like a little bit confusing.
Just some elements I'm not clear. Who are the two sides here?
The two sides are our movement and the corporation. Let's call it that way.
Okay. Yes.
But the third one that is not being acknowledged is the land itself.
Nature itself. Yes, I did understand that. Mm.
Yes. Yeah, wanted to say that. We can communicate. We can actually. What surprised me was that the land had no judgment whatsoever. So for the land or nature, it lives in a state where there's no right or wrong.
So what do you think of the concept of Gaia?
I would say it's a being.
But you did not see nature as having its own consciousness.
In this case, was communicating with that particular piece of land. Yes.
So what was the change for you? Did you then succeeded quite well from the sound of it?
Yes, we did.
And what made that change? What changed? I would guess that something changed in you, and I think you've been describing it. What was the change?
Peace.
Yes. Because when that's inside you, then the rest of your universe rearranges itself that way. Very good.
But the same way, we can be actors, active people that are changing our reality externally, but from a space of actually higher understanding. Not that it's better or worse. Just like, okay, I actually disagree with this and I'm going to do something about it, but it doesn't come from a savior's, or it doesn't come from like like because I cannot take it. It comes more like I disagree, and I choose to make an action. I'm just saying this because most of the times people might go into, I'm not going to do anything. Then everything is right, and it's so subtle.
I think it's your motivation that makes the difference. If your motivation is, I need to do this to prove myself to myself or other people, or I need to do this or I won't be worthy, then you won't succeed well. But if you're doing it out of a sense of things other than your individual worth, you're far more likely to succeed. You're more likely to channel other energies through you.
That strongly resonates, Michael, for sure.
Why did you leave that movement?
It was something that I was very connected with the land. I had the strong goal of being a voice to those who have no voice, in this case, nature. I have a deep love for nature, and I felt a strong disagreement within myself that place was going to be destroyed and many buildings were going to be put there. And it came from that space of, I disagree with this. And I'm going to put all my effort and time and energy to make a difference.
The creative part of that is wonderful. And that's for you to feel so strongly about it and so intensely means that you are far more creative in that phase of your life. It's here's me making a judgment. I think that's wonderful that happens. When we stop feeling intense, when we just survive from day to day, just to stay alive, we are not so creative. We just hold on to the bubble for a little bit longer.
I would love to ask you, what comes to me is a little bit about your trip to Peru that you had some years ago. Because I can feel your intensity on your search for truth that lead you, I'm guessing, to travel the world. And what did you find there?
Well, let's go back to where it started. As I told you in the last interview, I went very insane, rather spectacularly so, and was dragged off to a psychiatric hospital. I managed to talk my way out of there in a few months, but was still pretty disturbed. And then I went to a karate class where the instructor, who talked to me a little bit, and he watched me there, and he said, you need to read this book. And he gave me one that, and I've forgotten the title now, this is going back a bit, that talked about an abbey, a mystery abbey, which was somewhere in the Andes. And it was just as though it was beckoning me with a finger. So I abandoned everything and left my job and happened to meet my now wife just before I went and said, I'm going to South America. And she said, that's amazing. That's what I was planning. And she, for her own reasons, wanted to go there. So we joined in, and I went. And my wife, I have to say, put up with an awful lot from me because I was still very disturbed. And I was desperate to find this abbey. To me, there was no other way for me to make sense of existence. Well, we got to Chile, Santiago first, then up to Peru. And I started asking. I went to all sorts of obscure places to say, has anyone heard of this abbey? Anyone heard of the abbey? And this is the wonderful part. Even though I was not in a balanced frame of mind, my emotional alignment to the mission produced things which science would deny. People came out of the woodwork and said, I know what you're talking about. Should ask in that village. You should go up that valley. There are people there who know. And gradually got up towards the Altiplano. Shall I tell you about the man in the bowler hat again?
I would love that, yes.
I got to a very remote town, a village really, where there were no cars. People just in sombreros and ponchos.
I like how you say that.
Well, that should be familiar to you, my pronunciations.
It's perfect, actually. I really like it.
So you just picture mud huts, mud brick huts, no cars. I don't know how else to describe it. Not a shred of grass or tree anywhere. A plain, remote, poor village. And I'm walking down there, and before I've even mentioned anything to anybody, a man walks up to me with a bowler hat on and wearing a suit that looked as though it had been made in Savile Row, London. And he was carrying an umbrella in this place that never rains. I was quite shocked by it. It was as if someone had come down from another planet. And he came straight up to me and he said, "Senor, you're looking for the Abbey." And I feel emotional even now telling you this. And this is 30 years later. And I nodded or said yes. Whatever. This was all in Spanish. And he said, "You must ask in Yunga Kocha." Now, I've actually changed that name because I resolved at the time that other people would need to go through the same sort of thing. I've changed, that's a false name, but I've stuck to it in a book. Anyway, that pointed me in a different direction entirely. And look, things like that happened to me all the way. And we talked about affecting the internet as we talk now. Yes? It's the same stuff. It's the same thing. We create it as we go. It's absolutely wonderful. As long as we recognize that we are creating it.
So, can you tell us a little bit about these 5 fundamental truths of reality?
Okay. Well, I mentioned the first one, that we create our own reality. And we talked about the island where the trick is to look as deep as you can into your own mind to find the beliefs where a lot of unconscious things are creating that reality. That's the first one. The second one is that our life is a mirror. And of course, it's a reflection, so to speak, of the first one. If we are creating it all around us, then of course life is a mirror. If you see, for example, if you think everyone else around you is dishonest or can't be trusted, you're actually looking at yourself. Life is a mirror, and there's a lot to be learned about your own beliefs just by what you seem to observe around you. Everything is connected. Are you still there? Can you hear me?
Yes, you were saying everything is connected.
Everything is connected. Everything. I first heard this from someone called Chief Seattle, apparently a Red Indian, an American Indian, from way back, more than a century ago. And it's so right. And I felt that moment when I was still looking for the Abbey, way up on the Altiplano, that moment when I was on my hands and knees and I could barely put one hand in front of the other, and my heart condition started. And that moment when I felt that connection with everything, that's when what this Chief Seattle said fell into place. Of course, everything is connected. Whatever we look at, whatever we touch, our feelings, other people's feelings, it's all one. That's the third one. And the fourth one, where is it? The fourth one is that the moment that matters is now. We naturally from day to day think about things that happened yesterday, and we think about what we're going to do tomorrow. Of course, you wouldn't stop that. But what you want to encourage for anyone who wants to make life the way they want to make it is that right now is the powerful time. Right now is when you paint your next action onto the canvas. You can think about something you want tomorrow. Say you want to buy a car tomorrow. You don't have any money yet, but you want to buy a car tomorrow. There's no good just waiting around for it. You have to align everything towards that and go for it. And every action you take now has to line up with it. When I was on the way looking for the Abbey in the Andes, every thought, every moment was aligned towards that trip. And that's where all of those magical things happened. And the last one, we live forever.
I like that one.
I've had some interesting reactions to that one.
Oh, really? Can you share a couple?
Yes. Well, where's the proof is the big one.
Where is the not proof, you can say?
And I can't prove that to anybody. I know you have a feeling for it already. But for those people who are listening, where's the proof? No, there's no proof. But all of it has fallen into place so that that is an inevitable consequence.
To realize that.
Yes. And just nothing stops. Nothing stops. All of it is consciousness that changes its form. Hey, I thought of a good metaphor. Since I spoke to you, I thought of a good metaphor for this. Imagine that that instead of a body, you've got a hand which wears a glove. You with me?
Perfect.
Now, the glove changes. After time, it gets old and you change bits of it. And one finger wears out on the glove, and so you change that, and the glove keeps changing, right? But you, the hand in the center, that's you, doesn't change. It's only the external stuff that changes. You go on forever. And when we decide to cast off the glove altogether, that's, ending the game in this life, you still continue. You just find different ways, different ways to express in different forms. The game goes on, whatever.
Like it. That's our true nature as consciousness.
And your beliefs go on up to a point until you no longer need them. For example, if you believe that when you die, that's it, it's all over, and plenty of people think that, and then because you have that belief, that's what you will create up to a point until you are floating there thinking, why am I still thinking?
Right.
Why am I still thinking? What's going on? And then you begin to see the life you've had and all the constraints that you built into it, and you can start to release that belief system. Must be terrifying for people dying who think that that's all over.
Yeah, for some might be resting, maybe. But I would say that our natural state is that rest beyond resting. So that's a good news as well.
You won't need any rest.
We won't need any rest.
No, rest is a very now concept for this particular life.
Yes, I agree with you.
Actually, I've got to concede that when my father died, he utterly did not believe in any continuance of life, but he was perfectly happy. So I have to concede that there are people who are perfectly at peace, even though they think the light goes out completely. Yeah.
I think I heard someone saying that, referring to belief systems, someone asked him, how do you pick your beliefs? And he said, you can choose any belief you want, just if they serve you. Just check if they serve you.
Oh, that's so right.
And it's like, that's fabulous. If for you it's going to be better to think there's nothing else and you're going to have a wonderful life, go for it. And if for you it's like, no, you know what, I'm going to believe that I'm going to go to heaven no matter what, brilliant, or eternal life, awesome.
That's a great way to put it. Does it serve you? In fact, hasn't that been underneath all of our chats so far? If you, whatever the state of your mind and your beliefs, if you're not having a good time right now, something is not serving you. You've got to do something about that. And the trick is to realize that there are things you can do to change it.
Right. And you were mentioning actions. I really like that.
Actions are so important. Initially, when this all came to me, I had the idea that there were certain formulas or actions, rituals that you could undergo to have things happen magically all the time. And I missed the point that I made just a little bit earlier about having to take the actions step by step, moment by moment, towards what you want. You take actions. It's a philosophy. I can't think of his name right now. No. Back 150 years ago, this fellow, his name I can't think of, said, if you want a quality, act as if you have it already. And I couldn't agree more.
Fake it until you make it.
It is. That's right. And normally that's applied to horizontal activities, but but it applies. And I use that concept a lot in teaching, speaking in public.
Right.
There are people who have fundamental beliefs, and they say to me, I am not a public speaker. And I'll say, fine, you keep with that. What I'm going to show you is a way to switch on and act when you need it. And they can do that, and they can switch it off. They feel safe that way. And you see the cunning of that?
Yes.
If they know that they can switch this on, they have another dimension to their character. And the belief that they are not a public speaker starts to fray around the edges. Isn't that good? I have such a good job. It is so satisfying.
I love that you love your job so much.
Oh, it's terrific. It will never, ever be boring because people are so different. It's particularly that one. It's also very challenging because I have to walk the talk, don't I? If I teach speaking in public, I better be not too bad at it myself.
Well, I think you do an amazing job.
Well, as I said last time, you do make it easier. I've got nothing to teach you on this. Hey, this is too much mutual admiration. Let's get on with it.
Oh, goodness. So one thing that I would like to add that came to my mind when you were speaking is that one simple way to identify our beliefs is to be aware of how we speak, be aware of the words we're using, the statements we make. Those statements are, how do you call this? What's the word? Showing us what our underlying beliefs are. So people sometimes are like, how do I know what I'm believing? Well, actually pay attention to what you're saying and what you're thinking, of course. But that's so simple. It's kind of obvious.
That's a good combination with, is life serving you at the moment?
Great.
Isn't it? Watch your own thoughts. But I can't recommend that you watch your own thoughts all the time. And I know from experience, I was a very uncomfortable presence for many people when I was constantly examining myself. And what has really brought this home to me is this teaching people how to speak in public. Because the very best people are not watching their own thoughts at the time. They are speaking absolutely in the moment and intuitively. So maybe it's a combination of both. Sure, watch your own thoughts. Watch if they're serving you. Do you want them or not? But when you are what I call in flow, aligned, then you don't. It just comes right through you like a stream. And that's you at your most powerful then.
I love it. Yes, the embodiment of that. Michael, I feel we are kind of in time frame a little bit. One of the main things I'm taking out of this beautiful talk that we've been having together is the word peace.
Yes.
So we've tapped into different topics from what's beyond the judgment of good or bad, or belief systems, or the 5 fundamental truths of reality, how we create our reality. I think for both of us, the word peace has been like the consequence of actually understanding or having experienced this truth. I don't know. That's what I take from this talk the most.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Yes, the word peace. Is there anything that you feel you wanted to share or you wanted to tap into? I think we still have a few minutes.
You know, there's an old saying that's underlined my very long path to this very calm place I'm in now, and that's that the journey is the destination. I heard that a long time ago. I didn't understand it. I kept hearing it and I understood it a little, and now I understand it absolutely. The journey is itself the destination. Do you remember the question, what am I and who am I?
That's a huge question, yes.
The asking of that question is the answer.
Yes.
You don't have to arrive there. And once you realize that, that's when the peace comes. That's when tomorrow is no more important than today. And next hour is no more important than this moment. This is the time to have peace.
What can
Are you there?
I am. And while you're talking, and makes me reflect on this statement that you're sharing, I drop into that truth, and immediately my whole state changes.
That's good. Can I go back to science for a moment?
I would love you to go back to science.
I want to go back to quantum physics, which I started in way back, and to the discovery that the fundamental particle. Now, this is not fringe science. This is well accepted now. It's just that no one knows how to understand what's happening. The fundamental particles of the universe, the subatomic particles, their behavior depends on what is going on in the mind of the scientist who's looking at them, which blows people away. They don't know how to handle that. And their existence of the fundamental particles that they're looking at, the subatomic particles, whether they're there or not, depends on what is in the mind of the scientist. In other words, if he turns his back, or rather switches off his machines, it seems to be accepted now by classical science that the particle is no longer there. And I come back to that because it underlines the whole idea that we create our own reality. The only reason we haven't all adopted this is that science doesn't yet know how to apply it to everyday life.
Right.
And here's one more thing. Science hates the idea of consciousness. Hate is the wrong word. They can't handle the idea of consciousness. The best they can do, classical science, is to think that consciousness comes somehow out of material matter. Actually, it's the other way around.
It's the other way around, right?
It's the other way around. And I'm fond of an old science principle called Occam's razor. Have you heard of this one?
No, never.
It says this: use the simplest theory that explains all the known facts. Well, to me, it's staring them in the face. The simplest theory is that consciousness is our starting point and that matter comes from it. And once they get that, they'll be able to answer an awful lot of things.
That's a huge invitation for science in general.
I don't know where science really will go, but I keep waiting for them to find that one.
I will be curious to know how science is growing at such an amazing pace.
Hey, let me restate the first law of thermodynamics. First law of thermodynamics, I don't know what you did at school, but some students get it. Energy can be neither created nor destroyed, but can change its form. You come across that one?
Yes.
Okay. I think I would like to restate that. Consciousness can be neither created nor destroyed, but will change its form eternally.
Yeah, that's an interesting statement. I don't know actually if I resonate strongly with the third one, like the first one that you mentioned, which is the accepted
science one.
Science, yeah, it doesn't resonate in my system as truth, as ultimate truth.
So what's your feeling about the second way of putting it? Consciousness can be neither created nor destroyed. That, for me, it refers to a state of truth which is before creation itself. That doesn't change. That is constant. That is who we are. Mm. So, yep. And everything else, as you're saying, is creation from that constant. That's right. Yes. This went deep in just our last few minutes together. So let's say goodbye to our listeners. Thank you so much for listening to this amazing conversation. I've really enjoyed talking to you, Michael. And me to you, Javiera. It's very good. So sending you all a big hug, and comments are all welcome in 1133podcast.com, and you can find more about what Michael does in findingthefield.com. Am I right? That's right. One word, Finding the Field. Findingthefield.com. Your book is there. I know you've written other books as well. And you have some videos as well. Some I have some which?
Videos?
Oh, videos. Yes, I have. No, I have one video.
One video.
on the main website. It explains what it's all about.
Yes, from the land of New Zealand.
Well, I want to say goodbye to your listeners too and wish them all the best creating, deliberately, consciously creating their own reality.
Totally agree with that.